Welcome to the Life of Her Mind, a Lab Roots podcast devoted to learning how women think about their research, their fields, and their future. My name is Mia Wood, and I'm delighted to have the opportunity to interview Dr. Agnes Caruso, whose training in genomics led to creating better tools for genomics diagnostics. Dr. Caruso is the head consultant at Caruso International, a consulting firm specializing in the diagnostics industry, and founder of geneIQ, a nonprofit genetics and diagnostic organization aimed at helping people make sense of their genome. Dr. Caruso, welcome, and thank you for making time to chat.
Thank you, Mia, for inviting me to the podcast. I'm very humbled to be part of that project.
Thank you. You're very generous. So, first question, how did you find your, well, it's a multi-part question, sorry. How did you find your way to science and then from a PhD in biochemistry to genomics? Kind of what was your academic path that led you there? But so you ended up working in genomics, infectious diseases, and oncology.
Yes, that's kind of, it's a great question and it's kind of convoluted answer, but I'll try to make sense out of that. So it all started actually when I read James Watson's The Double Helix when I was about in grade 6. And that kind of opened my eyes to what DNA is. And I knew that at that moment that I want to be a geneticist. I kind of was always archaeologist, but then genetics kind of took over. And when I did my PhD in biochemistry, we had to kind of go with the academic department that was at universities. So even if your undergraduate was in genetics or microbiology, then you had two choices really to either go into microbiology or to biochemistry. And I thought that biochemistry opened more doors because you could apply that research into infectious diseases, human genetics, or anything else. So my focus in PhD was really on molecular biology, but most of my undergraduate training was split between microbiology and human genetics. So looking back at all the work that I did, actually the breakthrough came when I got the postdoctoral fellowship in medical genetics at Queen's University of Belfast and worked on eye disease, inherited eye disease. And it was eye-opening in many ways. But also I knew that genetics is going to be the future that I want to really focus on. And at that same time, when I think back, bioinformatics wasn't, now, right now everyone knows what bioinformatics is, computational biology. I mean, we have AI for it, back then bioinformatics wasn't something that existed. So we started working on that as well. So basically, I think for all those youngsters, don't get focused too much on what you're studying, but try to figure out where you want to go. I think that's the important piece.
So you knew from a really early age when you said that you were in, the 6th grade. All I could think of is if I had that book in 6th grade, I would have no idea what was going on, and you're reading it and saying, ooh, this looks really cool. This is what I would like to do. I mean, it seems to me clear that you were already sort of thinking at a pretty high level, even though it's science, there's still a lot of abstraction there with how you're meant to think about, the human genome. Did you do you know what it was about that grabbed you such that you ended up throwing over archaeology for genetics?
I think I know. I think it was the way he described that academic collaboration that kind of the spirit of academia, how you actually come up with answers to things that you don't know. I know right now it sounds kind of a bit cheesy and maybe a little bit odd because we don't do science the same way they used to do it in the 60s or 50s. But I hope that this spirit of kind of science creation is still there, and that we can still have those kind of very basic discussions and thinking about, the problems, because we don't solve the problems of the future by ourselves. It's always a team that solves it.
Is that something, so what you just mentioned, that science as done today, very different from 1960s. Are you talking about specifically the rise of like computer modeling and mathematical testing, or something else? I mean, what is it? And am I right to think that you're pointing to, at least in some areas of science, less collaboration than was the case before?
I think less human interaction, less of those kind of, let's sit with some coffee and discuss science problems that we have. I think a lot of this is now done. I have an idea, you have an idea, whose idea is better, rather than let's get to the bottom of what we're trying to solve. I think that's because we have tools that are really much better now than they used to be. And I think they're really helpful. And it's just, I think attitudes have changed, how we do it, how we approach the tools, how we approach the questions.
Would you say so that this question as a follow-up is a bit unfair because you work within your discipline, your domain, but insofar as diagnostics, where you're working now, cuts across a number of different disciplines. Are you thinking that this is a general problem, or is it specific to some specializations within science more so than others?
I think it's probably more visible in some areas than others, but it definitely in diagnostics, you pointed it correctly, Mia, because diagnostics cuts across everything. So you have to come up with what are you trying to diagnose? That's the first problem. And then how are you going to work on that? So in one of the positions I had, we were working on a point of care diagnostics for sexually transmitted infectious diseases. And that involves an instrument and assay software. So it involves engineers, microbiologists, it involves regulatory, it involves basically every single potential, group of people that you can think of. And then on top of that, marketing, sales, communications. So bringing all those people together to see what is the problem, how are we going to solve it, and then how are we going to make sure that patient can actually benefit from this. Because at the end of diagnostics, it's not, companies would like to say, oh, it's just the profit margin, but it's really the patient. And I always love to flip it on my teams is, remember, you could be the patient that this is being used on. So think about it, be fair and be honest to yourself. Would you want to be diagnosed using this piece of equipment or this test? So I think if we go back to those basics, we're on a good way to solving the problem. But if we just focus on, oh, my idea is the best in the universe, and that's how it has to be, then you hit roadblocks, you hit problems. And not just because you're creating them, but they disappear though.
So am I right to think that you've made a conscious effort to work in a way that is, collaborative, that is communicative, as opposed to thinking, which presumably in a certain market-driven industry, at least at some level, you could function just the opposite. Like, hey, this is a great idea. Let's just get it done. Let's do it. Not worry about whether somebody else's idea might work better in certain respects. Like, you've chosen to conduct your work in a collaborative way.
Yes, and I tried, and I'm still trying. This is not something you can say, oh, yes, I've always been collaborative, because things overtake with us. But you always have to correct yourself, think about what you're doing. Am I just being one of those nuts that just wants to drive it all the way through because I believe it, or I want to have others, because when you hit problems with your idea, then suddenly you need everyone else's help. So I think if you don't collaborate with others from start, you will have problems. So I'm trying always to be as inclusive and as collaborative, because if the product's multifaceted, you won't know everything about it, right, how to build pieces. So you need everyone's input.
How did you arrive at diagnostics?
Oh, that's even a better question. And the path was really windy. So I studied in academia. And doing research was great. I mean, I loved it. I still probably on some level miss it, but the colleagues were fantastic, collaborators, the students, everything was great. But unfortunately, there's something was missing. And part of it, I think, is the downside to doing research in academia, such as funding and some other aspects that I don't really want to dwell on too much. But I wanted to, I really was not seeing the path that we can take from the research that we're doing to the translation, to actually how this will benefit the patient at the end of it. So in the industry, I kind of started with my strongest skills and ran the R&D lab as a director for the diagnostics, so for the development and then also for manufacturing. I started in a startup, so you wear multiple hats. You suddenly have to take ownership of things you never thought you need to. But then on top of that, I added some business skills to those technical skills as part of the sales team at PerkinElmer. And working as the application scientist, you really come in contact with the lab directors, the technicians. You learn from a very different perspective because you see what their struggles are day to day, and what the problems they face. And it became very clear that they are missing a lot of really good tools that they can use. And I thought, oh, well, I would like to go back to development, but I don't want to be hands-on anymore. I want to kind of more orchestrate something that would kind of give them what they need. And I got my shot at becoming a product manager. I'm still very thankful to my boss at the time because he definitely believed in that I can deliver. And that combined the business skills and the technical skills and that ability to work with the customers.
So is it the case that the customer comes to you with an idea of what they want to accomplish, and then you develop that, you realize that in a product? Or is it also the case that you come up with ideas that you would like to see developed into a product? How does that work in the environment that you just talked about?
It comes from both directions. So you have internally, you do market research, market assessment, and you see where the gaps are, and you want to say, hey, we're really strong in doing this. Why don't we fill this gap with product that would really make it go away and be beneficial? And then also when you talk to the users, they go like, oh, this would be really cool to have this kind of product, do those kind of things. But when you talk to the customers, say you talk to 10 customers, you will come up with probably 100 of ideas, what they want. This will not be one idea. So then you have to kind of filter that in some ways. So it comes from both directions. And then as a product manager, you have to kind of figure out what you're going to build, what your proposed product's going to be, what features it's supposed to have to really align with what the company can do and what the users or customers expected it to do. Can we align those two things and get it to the market? I think this is the critical point where if you skip this, you end up with a product and no one wants to buy it, which happens. Or you end up with just a custom product that you sell at a premium or trying to sell at a premium. And if the customer is high volume, they're doing millions of tests a year, then that's fine. But if those customers only do a few hundred tests, that's not going to be business proposition, really. So,
how? Okay, so there are a few things that you've mentioned, and I don't know if I'll be able to pull them together in a way that will be coherent, but I'll try. I'm thinking. Okay, so I'm thinking about the speed at which various technologies are advancing, and given the breadth and depth of your experience, kind of how you see diagnostics advancing over the next decade. In there, somewhere, I'm curious about, and again, ignore these parts if they don't work well for you, but I'm curious about a point you made earlier, specifically about your early studies, but before bioinformatics was in use, even existed. So that. Also, I'm interested in how the development works in terms of kind of figuring out how best to measure what you want to measure. And I'm thinking about something maybe as simple as, okay, we know that we use a blood pressure cuff to measure blood pressure. Well, why did they come up with that? As opposed to, let's say, a thermometer to measure temperature, and you don't use one for the other. You don't confuse them. And that to something as complex as, a CT scan or an MRI, right? So just again, to recap, things are moving very quickly. Where do you see things going, and how do you kind of, when you look at where things were when you were first started out and where things are now and where they're going, and when you think about how you're going to envision the right sort of diagnostic tests, how do you proceed? Oh no, that's a lot, and I'm sorry.
No, that makes complete sense. One of the strangest things I was involved in once was trying to brainstorm a tricorder I think we probably have some Trekkies here. So, the Star Trek tricorder.
Oh, okay.
So that's how we would like to be able to just point a tricorder at you and get your, temperature, blood pressure, your
Okay.
brain waves, your sequence, they do increased sequencing of your DNA. I mean, all this was sci-fi back in the day. But when you think about pulling all those together, that
Mm,
actually is a real thing because we started with DNA, then we moved on to proteins and RNA,
mm,
and then epigenetics, then biochemistry, kind of metabolic biochemistry was always there. We would go for glucose, cholesterol, lipid tests and stuff. We
mm,
would get MRIs, CTs, X-rays. But the problem is not with individual things, it's how we can pull all this together, because I think
mm,
that's where the diagnostics really going, because
mm,
pulling all those omics, as everyone's just using omics for everything, but really I think pulling omics together and the information for individual patient over time, over multiple technologies,
mm,
is where you can deliver, because sometimes it's very obvious you broke your arm. Okay, we can set it. That's not a problem. I
mhm.
mean, yes, it is a problem for you, but it's not a problem for the doctor. They know how to deal with this. But if
Mhm,
you come with very vague symptoms,
mm,
um, then they don't know what to do with you. They send you for a million tests, then
mm,
they get the results, and they may not even see some of the data that's coming in there. So I think this is where
mm,
AI tools can desperately help us with
mm,
bringing those facts together. Because if you put yourself in a clinician's shoes,
mhm,
um, they have a few screens full of data from your
mhm,
results, and they need to make sense out of this.
mm,
So if someone's been a clinician for years, they'll probably notice, oh, yeah, I had a patient like this before.
mm,
I
mhm,
know what's going on. But if they straight from medical school with maybe just 2, 3 years of experience, they may have no idea. They've
mhm,
never seen a patient with those symptoms. So I think this is where we really, the diagnostics need to be able
mm.
to pull this information together. Um,
That makes a lot of
and
sense. As you were talking about it, I realized, oh, yes, there are um, conditions whose symptoms, let's say, are so diffuse that it's hard to pin down what the condition is, or the condition can roam over effectively different specializations. And so maybe you
Mhm.
go to one doctor, but then for another aspect, maybe for a different symptom, but it's the same condition, you go
Yep.
to another doctor. So what you're saying is, the idea would be to have something that amounts to that more holistic diagnostic tool that you were
Yes.
mentioning in connection with Star Trek. And I confess I didn't know about that, but now I'm thinking about episodes I did watch. I'm like, yes, I do know about that, but I didn't realize the name. Okay, do you see that that not the Trek tool, but basically the diagnostics industry, it is heading nicely in that direction?
I think it is heading in that direction. We still tend to be kind of a little bit oblivious to what's going on and tend to still prescribe
Hmm.
single tests and hope single tests will give us an answer. So
Mm-hmm,
one
mm-hmm,
example I wanted to bring up is, for example, ovarian cancer. So
mm-hmm,
early stages of ovarian cancer are very nondescript. You may have abdominal problems, you may have depression. None of those symptoms are really anything specific or pointing to, first of all, to cancer, secondly, to an ovarian cancer. And patients are sent to GI specialists who goes like, this orders all the tests and goes like, this nothing really.
Mm,
So, and then you go to another specialist for the depression, and they go
mm,
like, okay, I can give you some pills and it'll make you feel better. You can meditate, you can do that. But then no one pulls this information together, and maybe no one even asks you, was there ever a history
mhm,
of, some issues? The doctors don't take the medical history the same way they used to.
mm,
And we're advocating as part of the things on the geneIQ. We're trying to
mm,
advocate that patients actually do put that history together themselves for, for your kids, for their
mhm,
kids,
mhm,
for the
mhm,
benefit to see how the disease is tracked through the family.
mm, mhm,
So I think the diagnostics industry is moving this way. The multi-omics is definitely a thing. The AI tools are there. Now,
mhm,
are they good enough to be used by themselves? Yeah, depends who you talk to.
mhm.
So
Okay.
that's a separate discussion, I think.
Mm,
But they definitely can help pulling this. I think this is where the strength is.
okay.
Um, so I think point of care diagnostics also. So all this tricorder, science fiction piece, but you can do a lot with point of care.
Mhm,
And when you think about remote areas,
mm,
underserved populations,
mhm,
you would like to have this, one or two instruments you can bring that are small and allow you to diagnose, the flu and cancer and this and that, right?
mm, mhm.
I mean, some of them can because you just put a different test inside, but the hardware can be the same. So I think we're heading the right direction, definitely.
Oh, that's good to know. You mentioned your nonprofit, geneIQ. How did you come up with both your consulting firm and your nonprofit? How did those emerge?
So the geneIQ actually started quite a long time ago, and I'm ashamed how poor state it's still in, because it started as part of the Triangle Startup Weekend that we had in Durham, in North Carolina, in 2013.
Mhm,
And it was supposed to be actually a for-profit startup, kind of dealing more with the direct-to-consumer testing and how to analyze, how to actually understand the results they give you.
mhm,
Because as a geneticist, I was frequently asked, so what does that mean to
mhm,
me? Because a lot
mhm,
of people were doing 23andMe at that time or whatever other ancestry or other testing. However, kind of life gets in a way of, best laid plans.
mhm,
So that got put aside. And now when I came back to this, I seen more value in it become a nonprofit and kind of more educational portal. So I'm
mhm.
still working on exactly how this next growth stage will look like, but definitely we'll focus on education. We need to
Mm,
educate the public, and I think that's really where it's very greatly needed, especially with all the misinformation, all the AI
mhm,
nonsense that you can find online, and other nonsense. So it's important to actually cut through that
mm,
and go to the sources that are, you know, believable.
mm,
So, Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic,
mhm.
places where people are actually putting information that's valuable,
Mm.
and
That
bringing specialists. Yeah,
Oh, it's bringing specialists into that educational
yeah.
sphere. Okay.
Hmm.
That actually reminds me of what I was going to ask you last, but if it's okay, I'll ask you. It's sort of second to last. This uh, question about what in your field is, as it were, fit for peer review. And I was thinking initially about your expertise in diagnostic testing and scandals like the Theranos debacle. And then what you just said about how important education is, given how much misinformation or just or disinformation, how many mistakes are made. What do you think is broadly construed in your industry not ready for or not fit for peer review?
How much time do we have?
I know.
Let's not
take your top hits if you want.
I think there's a couple of things that probably can be discussed, but there's a couple of things that I would like to point out that they very close, but they're not quite close yet. So they are the technical aspects for one of them, and I'll name them in a moment, is definitely the technical aspects are there. We are kind of being ready, but not every single block to build that house is in the right place. So you may still have to go and get some more blocks from somewhere else. So one of the I think things that are closest to my heart is the newborn screening and the genomic newborn screening. So while it is being tested around the globe, there are multiple sites doing just that. The UK committed to sequencing 1 million babies. In the US, there's the Guardian study. There's couple other studies carrying on with that. So we definitely know how to do diagnostics in babies in ICU, in NICU. So those skills we have, really good. But it is different. As Stephen Kingsmore said, it's very different between diagnostics and screening. It's not the same set of problems because in diagnostics, you have a baby that's unwell. So you have symptoms, you have clinical presentation, you're looking for something that will explain this. While in a newborn screening, you're dealing with mostly healthy babies that will have no results on that newborn screen. So currently we're screening somewhere between 3 to 30, 50, 40 diseases, depending on country, region, etc. With the whole genome, if you imagine that's going to be the whole genome, right? So now what do we do? What do we report? How much is it going to cost? How are we even going to logistically organize it? Who is going to be running those tests? Who is going to pay for those tests? And I think there is a lot of unknowns, and there is more now studies into the economics of it. So how we can actually bring this into operations, because we can do now newborn screening with whole genome, but I think that we're not ready yet to report those results in a same manner, say in the UK as in the US, as in Timbuktu or somewhere else. And I think the key for newborn screening is for it to be safe, organized. And if your baby undergoes the test in the UK, the same test should bring the same results everywhere else in other lab. So I think this is where we're not exactly sure. And the second kind of a little bit linked to the fact that we are dealing with multiple populations is the polygenic risk scores, which people want to introduce into pretty much any screening when they use the whole genome. And what it means is that it will evaluate your risk of getting cancer, cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's. I mean, you name it, there's a condition that you want to assess with this. And I think for ovarian and breast cancer, we're pretty good with having decent data. And I think it's ready for, at least for the peer review. Like it's not, I don't think it's quite there for the clinic globally, but it's definitely in some countries it's being evaluated, and it's a decent complement to other tools. But I think what people would like to see it, oh, I can just run my do my whole genome, get the polygenic risk score for, I don't know, brain cancer or dementia, and I'll know. That's not how screening works. Screening works, the likelihood of you having that disease is, say, 2% or 10%. But I cannot tell you, you're not going to get it. And I think that's where this misinformation or incomplete information is happening. So while the tool may be ready, I think that translating the tool to the public needs some time and some proper discussion and saying, okay, we tested you, this is what we can tell you. But we cannot tell you, say, for example, that you will be 155 centimeter tall or you'll be 2 meter tall. Yeah. That's not the answer we can give you, but we can give you will be relatively taller than, the average person, for example. I mean, I'm kind of pulling that one out of the complete air, but those kind of, I think this can actually illustrate the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, I mean, it seems as though there's certainly when the domain of knowledge is new to the user, let's say, in this case, the patient. Even if it's not new to the scientists who developed it and the scientists who, or the practitioners who, diagnosticians and clinicians who use it, it's not new to them. But because, let's say, the tool hasn't been around as long as, a blood pressure cuff or something, and it's just, exponentially more complicated than a blood pressure cuff. There's a lot of work that has to be done for people to understand what it is that they're seeing when they see these results. And it also seems as though a big chunk of that is kind of understanding what, loosely speaking, what science does, what it can do, I suppose, and what its limits are. Which brings me to this question: what do you think when you think of the word science, particularly, if you don't mind, in connection with the very practical nature of a good chunk of your work, namely bringing a diagnostic tool to, clinicians and patients? What do you think of when you think of science?
Yeah, so science is the knowledge, obviously, but it's not only the knowledge. So to build something, we need to know what we're talking about. But then it's also the whole process, how you actually explore the world, explore the possibilities, because it is the scientific process. You cannot just build the test, this is done, now you use it. You have to validate, you have to show that it's actually fit for use, it is doing what you say it's doing, and it's doing it reproducibly. So all of those are scientific tools and scientific rigor that I think we're forgetting. We just say, oh, it's regulatory requirement to show those things in clinical trials. But clinical trials are just that, they scientific approach to demonstrate that what you build makes sense and it's healthy, that it's safe, secure, and the patient can actually use it. So that's what I think science is. At least for me, right?
No, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. It is this body of knowledge that has been collected, and it gets revised or it gets reinforced, it expands, it deepens, and then also this process and specific methodologies for, for collecting it. And I'm really fascinated by how you think of I guess what I hope it's fair to call the instruments by which we determine what is going on with a given patient. Like that's sort of an added component that we oftentimes, I mean, patients oftentimes don't think, oh, I got to go get my blood work, or oh, they're listening to my heart, or oh, I'm going to go and get an MRI. We don't typically think about it in, I think, really meaningful ways. So it's really exciting to hear you talk about, what it is that you do and how you go about thinking it, in terms of the big picture and settling on, like the details of a given diagnostic tool. What, may I ask one last question? What's your most exciting experience with generating a diagnostic tool technique?
I think the most exciting part was when I actually talked to some of our users of previous products. And I was saying, yeah, we're thinking about building a new product that will have kind of those general features. And they go like, okay, when can we buy it? That was their response. And I had a similar experience when we did a prototype kind of road trip. And we went to the offices and they said, okay, when can we order those instruments? And can you also add this test to it? Because that's like super critical test. And we need that answer in 20 minutes tops. That suddenly changes the way you were thinking of your product. And you go like, oh, okay, we are on the right track. And people obviously want it. So that was, I think, the most exciting piece when you see that when you're describing the tool or you're bringing the tool to the potential users, they go like, wow, I really want it. I want it now. When you're selling it, when is it going to be available? Or you getting deals signed before the launch of the product. You already have deals signed. That's exciting because you feel like you're actually making something that is going to be used, it's going to make a difference, and people want it. And I think that's really, really important. And while I talked about the nonprofit, I mean, in a consulting company, this is kind of what I want to bring to the table to some of those, especially startups, and help them build that same excitement with their potential customers. Not like, oh, okay, we build this product now, we need to sell it. That's the general path. But I want those potential customers coming to us and going like, when are you launching it? I want to order now. When is it going to be ready for me to order that? Can I get it now already? This is where you want to be. And I think that's the excitement. At least for me, that's the exciting part of building something, especially, I've seen too many people miss out on diagnosis or die because they weren't diagnosed early enough or properly. So, why there was actually, if you don't mind me taking a little bit of a
No,
side
please
trip
do.
here.
Yeah.
But in academia, when I was teaching a postgraduate course, one of the things we were doing is find a case that they can actually get their teeth in and follow the diagnostic story of the patient.
Mm-hmm.
So I found this particular case where the patient came to see a dentist because I was in a dental school at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And the dentist goes like, you're not really taking care of your teeth very well. And the patient goes like, but I have all those other problems. Oh, I don't really know what to do that. So they referred them out to another doctor and another doctor. To cut a long story short, the poor patient had experienced like an episode of House, where they basically diagnosed them doing CTs, MRIs, all sorts of blood work, invasive procedures.
Mm.
And all it took at the end is they landed up in some other dentist's office, and the dentist goes like, "Are you having problems with swallowing? Are you having issues with like dry mouth, dry this?" And the patient says, "Yes." You know what? I'll just talk to your GP and we'll send you for this one test. Guess what the patient had? A Sjogren syndrome, which is
Oh,
a
yeah.
dryness.
Uh-huh.
It's a genetic disorder
Mm-hmm.
which can be diagnosed actually pretty quickly if you ask the right questions and if you look at the patient holistically.
Mm-hmm.
This poor woman undergone like 6 months of exploratory testing of everything, being poked, prodded, and I said to the class, this is where your 2 minutes even with the patient properly asking questions can make a difference.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you see your dentist probably more than you see your GP,
Mm-hmm.
more than you see any specialist. To take the time, talk to the patient. Maybe it's diabetes, maybe it's something simple, but talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
And they go like, "Oh, that's a good advice."
Yeah.
Like, thank you. You're the clinicians. You tell me how that
Right.
will work and how that will fit. I'm
Right.
just giving you suggestions. You need to make it fit into your, way of dealing with patients.
Mm-hmm.
But
Right. That
yeah,
the knowing what to test, knowing what's possible to test for, as opposed to just, trying every possible test or just simply dismissing the issue, which sometimes
yeah,
happens. Makes a whole lot of sense.
yeah.
So it's both the getting the best tests that you can, um, and on the other side, so the tool itself has to be terrific, and then on the other side is that human ability to discern what questions are the best ones to ask, and then also, as you pointed out, the patient contributing to that process by,
Mhm.
you know talking about their history, and going back to your work with geneIQ, is knowing as much as possible about that to
Yeah,
help that process. Yes.
exactly. Because the patients have to advocate for themselves. If they
Right.
don't, then take a friend, take someone that knows maybe something
Mm,
more than you do,
hmm.
help to help you advocate for. And the doctors just need to know which tool to pick out
Mm,
from
hmm.
the tray of tools.
Hmm.
Because there's so many tools. I mean,
Yes.
when we get into cancer, there's like this test, that test. For just
Hmm.
colorectal cancer, there's like a dozen different tests.
Mm,
Which one
mm,
is the appropriate
mm.
one to use, for example? Yeah.
Oh, Dr. Agnes Caruso, thank you so much for generously sharing your time and your expertise. And I hope that we'll have a chance to chat again in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mia.
Of course, of course. Well, please join me next time on The Life of Her Mind. Meanwhile, please visit labroots.com for trending news, webinars, virtual events, and more. Thank you.